And if I'm looking at private act charters, I would define private act charters in two classifications. There's weak mayor and strong mayor. And it has nothing to do with the individual, it has to do with the power that charter gives to that individual.
Right.
So I can go to cities where Mayor John Holden in Dyersburg is a strong mayor charter, and he has a lot of power and authority. I come here, not so much, because the mayor doesn't even get a vote on the board. If there's a tie, he gets to break the tie. So it is a very frustrating place. I'm sure Steve could shake his head. It's a frustrating place to be the chief executive because you don't have a lot of authority. It's all vested in this board. And sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't work as well as it might. So
And sometimes it might have worked and it needs to change.
Well, it goes in cycles sometimes, you know, it'll be
With
fine for
different
10 years and then
personalities
and so
the cycle will come around and it'll be.
I can think of one of my cities that had a weak mayor charter, and they rewrote the charter and went to a strong mayor form based on who they had elected as mayor. I guess that's the reason I can think of why they changed it.
Many are changing to a city administrator or a city manager,
Yeah,
but that's not very common for a city this size.
Troy did that.
Mm-hmm.
We opened Troy's charter to do some cosmetic work, and I suggested to the city manager, well, he was the city recorder at the time, talked to the board. I said, why don't you add this language? And this language basically said you can hire a city administrator with a 2/3 vote of the board, and they'll do this, and this, and any other duties assigned by ordinance, by the board. And they adopted that, and then the mayor in Troy got sick, and she's since passed away. But nobody on the board wanted to step up and be that person to run the day-to-day operations, so their city recorder, they appointed him as administrator. And he's moved on now to Union City. Union City just hired him as their city manager, so, yeah.
I have one more question. You're talking about majority of the board. Are you talking about majority of all 6 or the majority of what is present?
I'd have to look at the charter. I
and-
don't remember what
and
the charter
that's-
said on that.
That's the rub, okay? It takes 4 to have if you had 4 here tonight, you could have a meeting.
If you had 3 aldermen and the mayor, you got
Yes.
4.
Yes. You would have if you had 4 aldermen, you'd have a quorum.
But if you only had 3 aldermen, then that would be a 2-to-1 vote. That's not majority.
They don't have a quorum, they can't meet. But here, to your question, if you had 4 here tonight, they could do a lot
Yeah.
with 4 votes, with 3 votes. Okay?
Okay.
Where you've got 7 normally, if all 7 were
6.
here, then it takes
Six.
6
6
and mayor.
votes.
yeah.
or
Same
5
with the
votes.
mayor.
So,
Mayor.
you know, attendance at these meetings is important because, you know,
Absolutely.
Okay, that's what I'm thinking.
well,
Yeah.
and that happens.
And with the ones, just call it like I said, the ones that are not here are the ones that need to be listening to this to
And
know
so-
how to handle things in the town.
I've talked with one of the aldermen today, and I'm gonna come back here and meet with them in a work session and kinda have this same conversation. And just basically tell them, you don't have any authority to go tell the public works director what to do. You don't.
Right.
And maybe that needs to be heard.
It does.
I'm not.
They need to hear it.
I'm not.
Listen.
I'm not the authority. I'm not the police. We're here to help cities, but it only stands to reason that he ought to have one boss and one boss only.
Correct.
And where the board comes into that is, if he comes to the mayor and says, man, I gotta have another backhoe, this one's just completely worn out. The mayor can go and ask the board for a backhoe, they have to appropriate the money. And if they don't appropriate the money, you see, there's their power.
Correct.
So,
While you're speaking of that, does an alderman individually have the right to go and purchase something for the city?
You
Like no, like a golf cart,
well,
like a
The
golf
city
cart.
does not have detailed adopted purchasing policies like they should. I will just say that. So the only thing that I have seen is one ordinance that says anything over $7,500, did you have to put out for sealed competitive bids? There are pages of state purchasing laws that city have to comply with, and none of those are addressed at the city level. So that is something that should be addressed going
we
forward,
can
and we
help
need
you.
detail.
We can help the city develop a purchasing policy. Our purchasing manual's about that thick. There's a 1982 state law, or 1983, but then it's also been added to and subtracted
It's
from,
very
and
convoluted.
and so,
the laws
at this
are very
point,
rough.
the state would allow any city to raise their bid limits, their purchase without bid, to $25,000. And so in this age of inflation, when you think about what it takes probably 2 weeks to get bids on a piece of equipment that you might really need. So they've raised the purchasing threshold. And it's up to the board to pass an ordinance to adopt that threshold. So we need to talk to the board about a purchasing policy. Yes, we can help them with that.
Question regarding, go ahead, Don, go ahead.
Sorry, no, you go ahead.
Regarding that purchasing policy, now, would there have to be a call meeting to vote on that purchase, or just pick up the phone, hey, and call all the aldermen
Unless it's,
individually instead of,
unless it's an emergency purchase, I would recommend just bringing it up at a regular
Right,
meeting. And
okay.
if you feel like you have to have a call meeting, okay, have a call meeting, but, normally, we kind of plan for these things, and
But purchase, you talked about calling on the phone,
can't
that's
do
not
that.
allowed.
yeah,
They can't
okay, well,
use-
just asking,
They allowed video stuff during the pandemic,
Yeah.
but for the most part, they can only make decisions as a group in person.
Okay,
Um,
in
but-
person, that's
But a lot of
okay.
these purchasing policies kind of delegate some of that, like the department head, you might be able to purchase to a certain level, as long as it's in the budget, but for the most part, no. City officials, city elected officials, except for the mayor and county commissioner, they don't go out and buy things, that's just not common.
I would not have expected that would have been the case.
One other question, I'll shut up. Regarding the vice mayor position, according to the charter, the vice mayor has to be an elected position,
Before you can be
with,
appointed to the vice mayor.
before he can be appointed to the vice mayor position. Duly elected and of good standing, the way the charter reads it.
This is a question I would have to defer to one of our attorneys, because if there's a vacancy on the board and the mayor makes a recommendation for somebody to be filling that position, and the board agrees, so they're basically electing that person to that position. I think it's a
I don't know
legal.
whether-
Well, it's a legal thing.
We're
and
dancing
neither
on-
one
I
of
can
us
see
are
there's a fine
attorneys.
line
We're
between if
dancing
they
on a-
elected them or
We're
if
dancing on the head of a pin.
the city elected,
I think once he is, and I'm not an attorney, but once that person is an alderman, and that board votes to make them the vice mayor, I think they're vice
So,
mayor.
so
all right.
I
what
don't
Bruce
know.
is getting at, then you could actually end up with a mayor who was never in any position, ever elected to be in any position.
We've had that before.
Yeah.
Technically, yeah, not elected by the public, so, and
Well-
again, that goes back to the charter,
And-
updating and those kind of things.
So I would defer to one of our attorneys to answer your question
All right.
specifically, but I'm thinking that when they elect him, when they vote on him to go on the board, they are electing him to the board. In the same sense that he got elected by.
Elected or appointed to make them
So
tomorrow.
there's a distinction.
Well, again, that's a
I
legal
agree
thing.
with you on that. Once the board voted him
Okay.
as an alderman, and then they turned around and voted to make him vice mayor, it was legal.
Okay.
I mean, that's my interpretation, but I've been wrong before.
But once that term ends, then they've got to go through and be duly
Election.
elected by the
Correct.
citizens.
Oh, yeah.
Once the term
They fill out
expires.
They fill out that term, is all, yes,
Alright, Dana, I got a couple more questions.
yes.
I have a long list for you.
Oh, no.
According to the charter, who can sign the checks for the city?
I'm gonna have to look up in the charter.
What
But
the
I
charters-
think the charter calls for the mayor and the recorder.
The mayor and the recorder.
Yeah, I think that's,
And what, the thing about Tennessee law, I'm a bean counter, I'm an accountant, so when I came to MTAS, I had to really get accustomed to reading Tennessee laws, and I learned really quick, the way they're written is if it doesn't give you permission to do something, you can't do it.
Yeah.
So only what the law specifically allows is legal. So it says the mayor and the recorder sign checks, that means mayor and the recorder, period. In this day and age, is that reasonable? Maybe not, but again, that goes back to the charter needs to be updated. But it should be an elected official.
I broke the law on that thing. I had vice mayor sign them too.
Well, that's pretty common. That's pretty common, but it should be an elected official, it
Because
should be one
sometimes I
office.
wouldn't be around and they needed a check, you know, the board voted on who could sign them at the time. We might have passed a resolution on that.
Which, and we have 2 aldermen that can sign
Yeah.
checks also in case of an
Right,
emergency.
right.
And that's the only time it should be used, in case of an emergency.
and you,
And
you've
the
got
mayor
your
not
name's got
apply.
signature cards.
Yes.
Yes.
I think one of them at least should always be on there. If one of them's out of pocket, then the backup
Yes,
should
yes,
sign.
yes.
Okay, the next question. As the record retention officer, as HR, as payroll, as accounts payable, I wear many hats.
Treasurer and tax
Treasurer and
collector.
tax
according to
collector.
the Charter.
Should I be able to lock my door to secure those items?
I think that those records need to be secured, the checks need to be secured. I would normally expect to find checks locked in a vault, when they're not being written.
So is an alderman individually allowed to tell me I have to leave my door unlocked?
No,
Okay.
Alderman can't legally tell you you have to do anything.
Now, here's the next question. When I have to take cash payments, okay? We have 1 cash drawer. 2 people working out of 1 cash drawer. Is that correct?
I would think you would address that in your internal controls and probably have a separate drawer for each person. That's a best practice.
I think that's pretty common, and I know county audit writes up counties all the time for working out of the same drawer.
And
Because-
we've been
because-
written up for that too.
So, and I think that's a very common internal control, is that everybody has their own, so that everybody's accountable for their own actions, and you don't have that
Exactly, you don't have,
commingling of who's done what. You know,
Right.
that's just not a good policy, it's
Right,
not a good
'cause
procedure.
I had one alderman tell me, well, just count it at the end of the day and you'll know if money's missing, but you don't know who took it.
I'm not telling you that doesn't happen all the time, especially in small cities.
Yeah.
It's probably common, but the best policy is for everybody to have their own drawer. And generally that cash drawer, who's ever working, checks out, signs out on the computer, the other person goes in the vault, grabs their drawer that is kept secured and locked down all the time, and they put it in there and they sign into the computer. Then it's totally separate.
really, I don't
That's
see
very
any
common.
difference like a branch bank having 2 employees, 2 tellers, drive-through window having 2 tellers.
You think they'd work out of the same drawer?
No, no. So what's,
Walmart employees don't even work out the same.
but,
I got another one.
Oh my goodness.
I told you I had a long list. Committee meetings. Are they open to the public? What constitutes, what kind of meeting can truly be closed and not opened?
There's only one exception to the open meetings law, and if the city is under a lawsuit, you're allowed to meet in executive session with your attorney because the city enjoys attorney-client privilege, but that's a very narrow exception. If your attorney recommended, well, we need to make a settlement, you've got to go back into open session to discuss what the settlement will be. It's a very narrow, so if your committee included 2 or more elected officials, it's got to be open to the public.
Okay.
So,
Isn't that good to hear?
because the way the law is written, and this is, the open meetings law may be the most violated law in the state. Maybe the speed limit tops it, but open meetings, if 2 or more elected officials are gathered together and they begin deliberation towards a decision, that's an open meeting. And so the idea is you don't, and so going back to your question about calling on the phone and saying to, no, you should not do that. I'm not saying it's not done,
Yeah.
but
Oh,
you
yeah,
shouldn't
and I'm
do
sure
that.
texting and emails over
But
the last
I
few
knew-
years have
I knew
gotten
all the
common, but
time.
is it the right thing to do?
So
When
Mr.
when I took minutes in a city council, it was to a point where I could build a shell and motion made by blank,
Yep.
seconded by blank,
Yep,
and I had it, and it was all because I knew they all
absolutely no
talked to each
discussion.
other, and
Exactly.
so I took notes on a shell that I just typed up.
And that's exactly what I do also.
Ms. Renee, do you have a question?
I do, when, if we're gonna try to amend some of the ordinances and try to go through and fix some of the things, so that has to be done at a regular board meeting?
Yes.
Okay, so we,
And an ordinance is amended by an ordinance, so it's gonna take 2 readings. So if you've passed something and adopted it, let me give you an example. You could do a personnel policy. If you adopt a personnel policy by resolution, it doesn't become part of your municipal code, so you could adopt a change to that policy with another resolution. If you adopt it by ordinance, that personnel policy is gonna go in your municipal code, and then it's gonna take an ordinance to change anything in it. So let's, an example. We have a personnel policy before last spring, and the federal government recognizes Juneteenth as an official holiday. The city decides, well, we're gonna add Juneteenth to our holiday. Well, you gotta change your personnel policy. If you've adopted it by resolution, it's easy, it's 1 reading. The city hereby adopts Juneteenth as a holiday to go with the federal government. If it's done with an ordinance, you've gotta do 2 readings and it's an ordinance and you change it to your municipal code.
And
I know I'm dancing on the head of a pin.
and both meetings has to be a majority vote, correct?
Yes, it has 2 readings, yes, and it has to pass both times. So here's a hierarchy of things. You can pass something with a motion and a second and a vote of the board, and that carries the same, it means exactly the same thing as a resolution does, but the resolution is a little bit more formal. And then the next step up is an ordinance, and the ordinance actually carries the weight of law, even if it's just within the city of Ridgely.
So, resolution is easier to cross something over than would be.
I usually recommend cities adopt policies with resolutions because that way they can go back and make amendments fairly easily. But again.
so if the circumstances change, you can reopen that.
Sure. And again, this is part of what I think is the city's personality. Some cities do their personnel policy by ordinance, and some they have an ordinance that says the board will adopt personnel policies. Okay. And then they were either adopted by resolution or by a motion in a second and a vote. It all has the same effect in the end. It's just, I think a resolution is a little more formal, and actually some things have to be done by ordinance. If you're changing your utility rates, anything dealing with money, the state says must be done by ordinance. And so it just adds, and your 2 readings can't be on the same day most of the time. I haven't looked at your charter, but most of the time, there's at least a
It
24
says
hour.
different days.
You know, so you could have a regular meeting and then have a call meeting, and I see cities do that to do their budget. Coming up on June the 30th, you know, they'll have a regular meeting and pass their budget on 1 reading, and then a second reading, they'll have a call meeting for that. But the idea is that the public is informed and nothing is done behind closed doors. Because in a sense, the reason for that is everything is funded with public funds, all confiscated funds, right?
Right.
So that's why the public has a right to know what the board is doing and how the money's being spent.
Good.
Well, I agree that the charter probably definitely, there's room to be updated, but as citizens, we need to be here to, have a say in it anyway, whether it's yea or nay, you know. Instead of this,
So-
you know, and guilty as charged, you know,
I
we need
don't-
to, we
I
need to
don't
be at these
often-
meetings.
Come up, wait a minute.
I will say this, and I've never seen it done, but it's allowed under Tennessee law. If your charter amendment has to have the support of the board to go forward. Okay, so let's say that you don't have the support of the board, when it goes through the legislative process, it comes out with the governor's signature, there's not a 2/3 vote on the board, you can pass that through to a vote of the people. And I don't ever see that because it's expensive to do
Yeah,
referendum
I can
votes.
see,
But it absolutely could happen, and occasionally does. I haven't seen it. So I don't know everybody on this board. I know several, but I don't think they're gonna change that charter because they like it the way it is.
You're right.
You know, and as a general rule, when there's a lot of dissent and issues, it's best not to change it at this point. Wait till things settle down.
Exactly.
And pass your resolutions, pass your ordinances, and try to get things leveled out, decide, you know, the things we're questioning right now, let all that settle down. Then go and update your
So let me
charter.
ask you this, I know that I know y'all can only like make recommendations, but like you see how many people are not here tonight. So like what if certain ones just refuse to change and follow the rules? What happens?
You have the next election.
Yeah, but that's a year away. But that's a year. But like her situation and her job, that's a year away. And what if this keeps going on and like her employee and they're all, like they're not here tonight to hear what's supposed to
She
do?
lose her job and then, you know.
Yeah.
there's
Right.
recall. You're right.
I
We need
think-
to-
So what will happen? I mean, what can be done? Because her job's at stake and what you've told us that's supposed to happen, it's not happening.
Well,
And her job's at stake.
It's not
Can anything
uncommon
be
for this
done?
stuff to go on, and it's gonna take the citizens.
Yeah,
The way elected officials, it's difficult to do anything but the citizens.
So nothing can be done and she might be sacrificed until,
May I ask
is that what
may I
you're
ask a
saying?
question?
Well, then they
Maybe,
got their
I'm
own
not an
rules.
attorney, so, I mean,
Okay.
Any way for a city to progress is the alderman and the mayor has to get along. They have to understand each other, and the alderman should support the mayor, because he is actually the one that's in charge of making sure everything's get done, making sure that everything's needed for the city. And one other question, and then I'm through. Does the mayor have the right to veto?
Is it in the
Yes,
charter?
it
it's in the
The charter
charter.
says so.
Alright, so, probably, if it's in your charter, he has the right to do that, but then they're gonna turn right back around and they have enough votes to carry it.
Then you
He
can't
can
veto
ve-
it.
The
but
charter
one
says
time.
he can veto it for 1 month, and then they can bring it back up the next month. The question is, can he veto it again?
I think they override his veto.
Yeah, I think at the next regular meeting, they can vote and it sticks, whatever.
And I don't, is there a threshold to override the veto? I don't have the charter in front of me. Usually there's a threshold.
It's a
Yes, it's right
threshold
here.
in there for.
Is there in there?
I've read it.
Did you ask him if the
He's got
city
it right there.
recorder was
He's got the
over
charter.
the water clerk? Yeah.
Yeah, everybody goes on, I have it here.
So,
I will say that the city recorder is also the treasurer, the tax collector. The city recorder, especially in a part-time mayor form of government, has a huge responsibility to make sure everything is documented, that the city records and all the ordinances and minutes and resolutions are kept and they're safeguarded and the monies are safeguarded. And it is very difficult to find somebody that's doing what she's doing and come in here in
Yes.
6 months and
Yes.
accomplish what I've been working with her since the day she walked in the door, and it has not been easy.
And how much can the alderman hassle her or
Yeah.
give her a hard
And they
time?
fight wherever which one they.
Right.
The charter
fight her
gives
every
the
way.
board the authority to hire and fire. You can't change that.
What happened, say that again?
The
Yeah,
charter
you know,
gives
the
the
board
the
hires and
authority,
fires.
has the authority to hire and fire. You can't
Regardless,
change that.
They hire and fire. Yep.
The board can have a majority vote.
As a
It has
body.
to be a majority. The board as a group,
Right.
not individually,
Not
as a group, they must vote on it.
And just like my job, and they say I go through the same thing with me being public works, correct?
And Public Works, are you certified wastewater?
I'm not certified enough.
That's
Well,
fine.
Well, but your job and that job are two of the hardest positions to fill right now, I'm telling you.
I'll say it.
Cause I have cities every day that said, I need a recorder, I need a bookkeeper, I gotta have a CMFO in here, and the CMFO program is not an easy program to get through. Those tests that water, wastewater have to take are very hard tests.
Very hard.
Yeah, I'm studying for one now.
And I'm telling you, if you can get these people, Ridgely is very lucky to have folks with these certifications that are progressing toward their certifications, because they're very difficult to find. I will just tell you, because I get calls all
So
the
I
time.
think, the real loser, I think, would be the city of Ridgely if they dismissed people that are certainly qualified to do the job. I mean, I think if you're of one mind here, come to the meetings, and they'll, what this board, make them look you in the eye if they're gonna fire somebody, honestly.
We hired.
Especially
this-
without cause.
We elected this board to represent the city.
Sure, see where they at.
Well, and as you saw at the meeting Friday, half of them got up and left.
You elect,
They passed the vote, they got up and left, they didn't wanna hear what any of them had.
When
Matter
it's-
of fact, they said they couldn't even speak before.
So
They only care about themselves.
Did they adjourn in the past?
No,
so,
Well, the thing is this new law passed that gives the citizens the opportunity to speak. You have that right,
Absolutely.
but it needs to be like we're doing here. Raising your hand, each taking your turns, come prepared, because if you're all talking over each other and arguing and fighting,
Nothing's gonna get
the
accomplished.
recorder can't even take minutes, I wouldn't think. I wouldn't know if you heard votes or nays or yays, because there's just too much disruption. So do it in a civil, orderly manner.
But-
That's
but
my
like-
biggest.
And it would
that's
have
very
got done.
important. Let everybody have their word.
when they come in though, and it's already been discussed before they came here, and 2 seconds after they walk in, you got a motion and a second. I mean, they're not really open for any discussion. You know, it's already, they've made their mind up, this is the way it's gonna be, we don't care. So,
Hold on, the mayor has the right, he runs this courtroom, he has the right to say, before we vote, let's discuss. Am I right, Dana?
if you're following Robert's Rules of Order, yeah, motion, second, discussion.
Yeah.
But they fight, remember which way there is.
You asked it the other night, remember? They said no, we already made a motion.
Yeah.
And second motion is passed and we're voting, and no, they are not allowed to
I'm
speak.
gonna guess in your code you've adopted Robert's Rules. I'm not positive of it, but just a point of order, you can call them on it. Okay, you got more questions?
I think you've answered all
Have
of
I?
them.
I got
I
one.
want to ask you something, okay? The proposition now, you know, we got trouble in the office, and, they're gonna dismiss her probably. I think that's what they got on their mind, they swung over, and I think it's dyed in the wool to fire her. Okay, there's nobody in the state, in other words, when she gets fired, it's over, is that right?
I don't know if that's something you can veto or not. That's something I would have to check with the
You can veto
attorneys.
it one time.
I know, but after that, we're trying to determine that you're gonna be gone, and we're gonna keep the clerk. Okay? So she's gone, and we're gonna have to start over, is that what we're gonna do?
That's something I can't answer, you know, we can't,
Yes, sir.
personnel issues
If
are.
they fire her tonight, I believe that you could rehire her the next day, and then they couldn't bring it back up to the next month's meeting.
That's all Fred in the charter.
What a way to live.
Yeah, really.
Yeah. You see what we're looking at,
I
right?
Sean, you live month to month.
I've lived that way. I lived, when I was city manager, I lived upstairs above City Hall. And I would call my wife going up those stairs after a meeting, pay the bills this month, they can't fire me until next month. True story. I'm serious, true story.
And here's another true story for you. If I did not care about this city and the workers here and the citizens here, I would have already hit the door. But I care about this city, so I don't want to quit and just let them have free reign to continue doing what they're doing. So I'm gonna hang on as long as I can, and if they get rid of me, then we'll go to the next step and.
And these guys are the only,
And so-
only people that.
You've got a lot of city support
Fire
there.
the other, you need to
Yeah.
fire her.
We need to start opening up civic center.
I would think not.
We
Even
done a
though-
She's
resolution-
HR.
Hold on, we done a resolution on that all department heads hire and fire their own.
Really. I haven't seen that resolution.
Where's that, I don't know, but the board voted on it, and all.
I do remember that. That was one of the first meetings I come this
You
year.
remember that?
This year.
Yeah, that was just a few months
So,
ago.
I will say this,
It was
if,
January and February when I
You
remember.
just had a copy of
The
it at the
real-
last meeting.
the real loser is gonna be the city of Ridgely.
Exactly.
Because not only are you going to lose a good employee, then it becomes a civil matter, and you're likely gonna get an insurance payment, and your rates will go up. Because there won't be grounds for doing what they do, and they just, because they want to, right?
Well,
Is that what I'm hearing? I don't
It's a
know.
vendetta.
Exactly right.
You know, and I'll tell you what I've seen in cities when there's constant turnover in the recorder's position. The bank accounts don't get reconciled. They get so far behind, the accounting system gets out of date. And the auditors are not gonna come in and do your annual audit. And if the numbers aren't caught up, you can't do your new budget because you have no accurate numbers to go on. And guess what? If you don't do your budget, you don't get to borrow money and you don't get to do projects and buy equipment. There is this vicious cycle, and it all starts with not keeping things caught up with your finances.
Snowball headed for hell.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, that's what it
There's
boils down
I don't wanna
to.
see nothing
state
down there.
laws and requirements in keeping the finances and the accounting and everything reconciled in a timely manner is so important because there are so many repercussions and there's this domino effect. I've got a city that didn't even adopt a budget for 2 years. Well, guess what? Their audits are 3 years behind. The comptroller's office
think
is
I know
not
what
gonna let
city that
them
is.
borrow any money. Because it's the comptroller's the oversight folks. And they have the ability to come in and send somebody in here to get it caught up, but guess who's gonna pay for it?
Joe
You guys are.
Well, here they just bring an ex-employee in.
I got one more question, since you're saying all that. I was told my position as recorder is equal to the water clerk. Is that the case?
I'm a finance person. And of course, I think highly of the accounting and the finance function. Not all people do, but I know from looking at your charter, the recorder is mentioned, the treasurer is mentioned, the tax collector is mentioned. I see no mention in your charter about a utility clerk or any other kind of clerk. So that leads me to believe that the recorder, treasurer, tax collector should be considered a city official
The way that.
and a department head.
The way
It's
to
not
look at
clear.
that,
It's
the way
not
to look
always
at that
clear.
legally, if you look at that legally, one of our attorneys, I'm gonna quote Melissa Ashton, if your position is named in the charter, you're an officer of the corporation. So, that's an.
Why would the
recorder-
charter
the
mention
recorder
that
would be-
position if that was
So-
not a critical position and function of the
There's one
Yeah, I
more,
agree.
there's one more argument I would make, and I think it goes back to because you had, when Rachel was here, she was working on CMFO but never got it. You had a 2-year clock to get a CMFO in place, and you haven't done that.
Not
So,
since Jan left.
One of these days, the mayor's gonna get a letter from the comptroller's office saying, we're gonna start withholding state shared revenue as of this date if you don't comply, and either hire a CMFO or hire a CPA to do it. So I would make the argument back, hey, we've got somebody here who's passed the test, making progress, we're making a good faith effort. That would be my counter argument, but if you dismiss that person,
Back to
and you
square
start
one.
over again. See, I always want to be able to show to any oversight authority, whether it's a comptroller's office or anybody else, I recognize the problem, I'm addressing the issues, here's my plan to get better. You don't ever want to go in there, they call it a show cause hearing. if you lose money in the utility for 2 years, you'll get invited to a show cause hearing, and the mayor's gonna have to show cause why the state shouldn't set your rates for you. And so he goes up there with a plan that says, you know, I've had MTAS do a rate study for us, and here it is, and we're gonna implement this, and so you've got a plan, so they let you off the hook, you see. But I have seen cities that didn't comply with CMFO start to lose state share revenue. And you can't afford to do that.
Yeah, that's a big chunk of money.
Can't afford
Yeah,
that.
that's sales tax, that's state
So-
street aid money.
Have we answered some questions?
Yes, very much so. Glad y'all showed
Are we
up.
okay? Yes.
Here's one, that's another hand up.
Don't employees have a recourse, if the board fires them for an illegitimate reason?
I think they have a civil recourse.
I think there's
Tennessee-
agreements
Tennessee's a
policy
right
or
to work
something
state,
like that,
so-
or-
And basically, our attorneys say in Tennessee, you can be dismissed for any reason or no reason.
That's it. Miss Renee needs to ask a question, I think she's gotta go.
No, I don't have a question. Tammy asked some of the questions that I was going to. I was just gonna let y'all know, but I'm not upset. I just need to go.
Glad you're here. Good to see you here.
Yes, thank you for coming.
I wasn't voted this time. I was appointed, but I was voted the other time, and my commitment to this town is in the people.
There you go. Amen.
Amen.
I have to go too.
Well, I don't, I have a follow-up question. I have a follow-up question.
Yes,
You mentioned that, you mentioned that you were coming back to talk to the board regarding, I'm assuming, a committee meeting that they're having.
I
Now-
don't know if it's, I would describe it as a work session. And so I'll go over some of the same things we talked about tonight.
So my question then, in your work session, are the citizens invited to that work session?
don't know if
Is that an
you're-
open
I
meeting
mean-
also? It should be, right?
Our attorneys would say that it's an open meeting.
Steve, we'll see you.
I told the mayor tonight that when I start, the ground rules are gonna be set down, that there'll be no deliberation towards a decision. This is an information. So if the elected officials are gathered, but they aren't deliberating, and that's a really fine line. So you kinda have to set those rules at the beginning.
Wouldn't that be up to the mayor to make it the meeting how he
I mean,
wanted it?
That'd be same as a committee meeting, right?
Actually, it's not.
I
It's a
think-
working meeting, and it's a lot of conversation about policies.
Yes.
And so actually, they're not making any decisions.
Now, they're not deliberating towards.
They're not even deliberating, they're rewriting policy. So I don't see why any reason that they shouldn't be there. There's just no conversation.
That's why I suggested to the mayor that I'm happy to meet with them and give them an idea of how to chart a course forward. These are policies you need to have. You need a personnel policy.
Right.
You need to update
Purchasing
your
policies,
internal
yeah.
control policy. You need, and we have staff and we have folks and we will help you do that. That's part of what we do.
So, and then the second question is the internal
fact,
control policy and the personnel policy, is that part of the ordinance or is that part of the charter? Or is that?
It's neither one. They're just
Okay.
policies that the board would adopt.
It could be an ordinance,
It could
but
be.
generally it's done by resolution.
Yeah.
An ordinance is more concrete, and there's certain basics that you might wanna be in the ordinance, but then to defer it to a resolution for more details, because again, it's easier to change a resolution, and it
Sure.
could be a good thing or a bad thing.
Sure, so it's just almost like an addendum to the ordinance.
That personnel policies shall be adopted by resolution,
resolution.
so make sure they're addressed, and that in the ordinance it
I mean,
says, we
because
will adopt personnel.
This is the reason you have to have good policies, because when somebody walks in the door and maybe they haven't paid their utility bill, so you cut them off. And they're mad as a hornet, and they come in the door, I wanna see your policy. Well, we don't have a policy, it's just what we've always done.
Right.
No.
Right.
You need to show them a policy where you have been directed by the mayor or the board
To shut
to
your
do
mouth.
exactly, because utility is a co-op. To the extent that I don't pay my bill, I'm asking everybody else to pay part of it, because there's no government money in a utility.
Mr.
Very
President,
much.
may I say one thing that doesn't have anything to do with making this money? Chief J. Parrish, He's been carried to the hospital. He was throwing up blood, very, very thin. So let's keep him in your prayers.
Terry. Terry.
Gives me the chills.
Throwing up blood, he's
went to the
gone to the
hospital.
hospital.
Yes, sir.
I got just a question. I've been public works director here for, well, ever since Steve come in, but I've been with the city region for 43 years.
Wow.
I've never had as much controversy as what I have now. Now,
You never had what?
as much controversy as it is.
Controversy.
And what I don't understand is they expect me to do my job. I'm gonna do my job where it makes this one mad. Me and Mr. Don may get aggravated with each other, but we don't get mad. We sit down and talk it out. And we got someone on this board that you can't talk to. And I mean, I know I'm just asking what am I actually supposed to do in this? Call for Mel and just live with it?
That's why you need personnel policies, and you need a hierarchy, and you need to know who it is that you answer to.
That's the reason I asked the question, Walter.
And that is something that's gotta be determined, and that's part of the policy that the board needs to adopt.
But as it's saying, as the charter says that Don is over the day-to-day, you report to Don.
I report to Don,
That's
correct?
Yes.
it. He's
That's
the
it.
only one you
Yes.
report to.
Okay, now, this money that we have to carry, it's to the bank.
Uh-huh.
All right, I'll talk to you about that today. And most time cash money, they'll ask me to carry the money to the bank for them.
Right.
Is that legal for me to do? I wanna know right now.
From an accounting and an internal control perspective, since there's only 2 people in the office, and there are times when both of them are gonna have to collect money.
Right.
And the person collecting the money should not also be carrying it to the bank. That's an internal control problem. It's called segregation of duties, and you should have, more than 2 sets of eyes when there's only 2 people. It's very difficult to have 2 people in office. So yes, we do recommend that a police officer or public works person take a sealed bank. They should seal it and count it. All you should have to do is hand it to the bank teller and get. They make locking bags to protect you,
Right.
so that it's locked when it leaves here, and you go straight to the bank and bring them the deposit slip. It helps them separate things.
I'm not a dishonest person, but anything can happen. And I just want to know what's gonna happen, you know what I'm saying?
Cause it would be your word against hers,
Right.
whether or not the money was enough.
Right.
Because we do not have locking bags, it's just a regular bank bag.
You should get a
So-
locking bag, cause it helps protect him
I've never had a
too.
problem since I've been here, I mean, and I don't want no problem, I don't know nobody looking at me now saying, cause I've been here 43 years, never had a problem with anybody.
Look how things have changed.
Well, we had
The bank will
2
give you the
consultants, we
lock
had a
bag.
finance consultant.
2 years.
I just wanna make sure.
In the last 2 years since I've been gone from the city, look at the changes.
Oh, yeah.
Just 2 years.
Yeah.
Look at it. I mean, it's went from heaven to hell, excuse my language, but that's what it's went to in the last 2 years, right here.
Every position on this board is up for election next November.
Does the budget have to be checked before pay raise is given by the board?
Does what have to be checked?
The budget's supposed to be checked before pay raises and expenditures are given. What I think the charter, I remember the charter saying is that before any monies are committed, you have to ensure they are in the treasury. I think is the way that charter's wording. Again, some of this wording is old, but before those type of decisions are made, it is general policy to make sure there's money in the budget to do it. That's, again, you can make budget amendments, but you amend the budget by ordinance. Those are why personnel policies need to be adopted, because they need to clearly set out
Right.
when raises are given. I've had police departments that the police chief says, we're on a tiered schedule, so our officers get a raise every year or every 2 years on this system, but so they stay competitive. Then there was a question like, well, what if we don't have the money in the budget to do it? Well, if there's no money, I'm sorry, but we can't follow that policy. It's all subject to the funds being available. And that's something that all department heads need to understand. This is all subject to available funds.
To answer your question specifically, if you're gonna spend money, there should be a budget amendment done. And whether you do that right away or whether you do that at the end of the year, certain cities do things differently. But it's 2 sides. One side is the expense, the other side is where the money comes from.
Right.
And it's either gonna come from existing appropriations, in other words, we're gonna take and we're not gonna do training, we're gonna put that in salary, or whatever. Or it's gonna come out of fund balance, which is in the bank. So unobligated fund balance, as what Kay would refer to it as. Something has to happen somewhere, and in order to make accurate financial decisions, this board every month needs to get good financial reports from the CMFO so that they know, hey, we've got money to do this, or we don't. Because you really don't know.
Right.
That's why, like I said, that's why it's so important to adopt personnel policies that address these things, because you have to treat people equally.
Yeah.
That's what it creates so much morale issues.
I got 3-4 employees, and that's all we got, we run this whole town.
Yeah.
And people think, a lot of people they say, well, you need to be here, you need to be there. I don't, originally don't have them all.
Not treating people equally is one of the biggest ways to get in trouble
Right.
as a unit.
And I mean, it's hard to run this town with 3 people.
Shouldn't pay, excuse me,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
shouldn't pay raises be given by job performance?
That's a thing that needs to be described in the personnel policy, because if it is not in writing what your policies are, then it's gonna be all over the board. And for the most part, now, small cities, and if they do not have this stuff detailed in the personnel policies, employees get raised at budget time and then they don't get any more.
That's it.
They usually get cost of living raise. Or it's,
And that's what has been
That's
done
what
here
happened.
until now.
Yes.
like I
Which,
said, that's
you know-
the lack of policies in place that is allowing it to be all
All
over the
over.
place.
But apparently the board is using that lack of policies to do whatever they want.
Yes, they are.
That's an observation.
I-
See, I get to go home tonight, you guys have to live here. You have to work here. Yeah.
Again, we are not attorneys, and I will tell you, every city is different, and it's all about your unique problems and issues to deal with. And start with a charter, start with ordinances, and start with
I already told you.
detailed policies and procedures to get rid of some of these questionable things where nobody knows who's supervising who. It's very important. And I think the internal control policies need to be updated. I think there needs to be more detail put in there.
Okay, so they have a committee working on the personnel policy now. Should the internal control be part of that, or should it be separate?
I think I would have personnel policies separate and just refer to them in the internal control manual. That we have separately adopted personnel policies that dictate raises and promotions and those kind of things. And we have HR people that can give you somewhere to start. You don't have to start from scratch.
That's right, that's right.
If somebody calls
Well,
you
they
about
have the
a
Stanton
job
one that was just
people
done,
get-
and they
Okay.
have the just generic model
Okay.
that Dana sent to
Okay.
Frankie, that
Okay.
they used for the first
Okay.
time meeting, so.
50-50 deal
Yeah.
there.
And we, like I said, a lot of, descriptions, job descriptions are old. They're like back when you were before computers, so we've tried to update those over the last several years.
And like our purchasing policy that my grant administrator needs from us, we don't even have a purchasing policy.
Work session before
So-
the council meeting.
Yeah, we got a lot of work that needs to be done.
Yeah, we've got some, I think I sent you one, didn't I? That was more simple than what they
If I
sent
recall,
you. Yes, ma'am, did you have another question?
The starting salaries, for each job, is there a place for the starting salaries?
MTAS does a salary survey, and only cities that participate will have information there, and it will compare a city recorder in one city to a city recorder in another city, and so that gives you a ballpark idea, but that is all up to the city officials. But it should be documented. You should document at least every year for the budget. This is their hourly salary.
So the mayor,
It's an hour and a half you talk about.
the mayor and the recorder hired a lady at $15 an hour. And she was told she would get a raise $1 an hour in the first 6 months.
I hope so. You
And
guys
an
have a
additional
difficult,
$1 in the second
you have a
6
difficult
months.
job.
She was actually given a raise last week. A $2 raise.
$2. Again, that's a lack of policies in place.
Right. Question, HR for MTAS, do they partner with the city and help them to write just what she was talking about, a job description as well as a task analysis to get to that job wage?
A task analysis, I don't know. Well, you'd have to talk to our HR person. I'm sure there are those, but I don't know that it would be necessary to do that if you had comparatives to cities with similar functions like water, sewer, and similar size. You might be able to do that without the task analysis.
Is the alderman allowed to stop you where you don't open up a business here?
I don't know. I was told, and I'm just telling you, like I said, I'm not an attorney. I was told that a city cannot stop you from getting a business license because that is at the state level.
Absolutely.
And as long as it's proper zoning and there's no ordinances that prohibit that type of business, then that was my understanding from one of the other management consultants. But he had that issue that the city didn't want to give a certain person a business license. But if you apply for a business license online at the state level, then I don't think the city can say no, again, unless there's an ordinance or something that prohibits that type of business,
And
or
this
it's a
was-
zoning issue.
This was individual, right? This was not at a board meeting.
This was not at a board meeting, no.
It was just an
It was
individual
individual
alderman told
said
you no.
I was not running a business this year in this town.
What's the business?
It's a haunted house.
A haunted house?
Yes, sir.
You know that
I mean, I got
can't-
everything. I got everything last year. They was on me last year. They told me I had to get business license. I had to get insurance. I had to get the whole 9 yards. I got, and I done everything they told me to do. And I left signs on my building to promote my building all out through the year. And I had these aldermen here to go to my building personally to take the stuff off of my building, what I purchased out of my pocket.
Well, you're getting above our heads here. I think it's time for me to call the chief of police. Again, it depends on the ordinances and resolutions and what type of business and whether there are restrictions, and all that is buried in the city code somewhere.
Are y'all gonna come back and visit again?
So was that a yes or a
Very,
no
very
on the,
informative.
no, on the next meeting that you're gonna have with the alderman? Can we come or can we not come?
It's gonna be a regular meeting.
We're gonna meet
It's gonna be the regular meeting.
we're gonna meet before the regular council meeting in a work session. I hope to have the board members present and talk just like we're talking right now.
Okay, and the citizens can come to that meeting.
We're gonna have that before the regular meeting.
Yeah.
So we can come or we can't
What she's
come.
asking is, are the citizens gonna be allowed to come to that work meeting?
What do you say? You say no,
It's-
right?
It's my understanding, see, we don't even agree on some of this stuff, that our attorney needs to tell you whether or not.
Okay.
The attorney needs to tell you. It's our understanding the only closed meetings can be client, attorney, privilege type discussions where there's a lawsuit and it's protected by.
They can't stop the public from coming to that meeting.
They can't stop the public from coming. That's all we need to know. That's all we need to hear.
But I will say, a lot of these folks on this board probably won't be comfortable discussing things with the public in the room.
Well, I'm sure
For whatever reason.
You know what? I got kicked out.
They're not here.
I got kicked out of a meeting last week and so did the mayor's wife. We got kicked out of a committee meeting and had to sit on the curb over here for 2 hours.
I just don't see how they, I don't see how they have a committee meeting with 2 or more elected officials without the public being involved, because they're deliberating
The
towards
whole
a
board
decision.
was there.
I'm sure they're deliberating towards a decision, so.
Yep.
The cure, when they violate the open meetings law, the cure is to come back in an open meeting and make that same decision again.
So,
That's the cure.
okay, then
So-
that makes me have another question.
Uh-oh. You got more questions than my 3-year-old granddaughter.
I'm sorry. In the meeting, where, that they had a committee meeting,
that was only myself, the water clerk, 3 aldermen, and the mayor. No, 4 aldermen and the mayor. Where they gave us 2 weeks to get along or we'd be fired. It was, nobody else was allowed in there, so that makes it an illegal meeting, correct?
So whatever action they took in that meeting is gonna be
Null and void.
held up in the courts as null and void. And they'll have to make that announcement in a regular meeting.
So I'm not on 2 weeks' notice then. Praise the Lord.
But you left out the good part, because 3 days later,
And passed,
is when they did a call meeting to give the other employee $2 an hour.
We just want to help citizens learn and understand, just like we wanna help the mayor and the recorder. It is our job to work for these guys. If you guys were to call us and ask us a question, we couldn't answer it, because we don't work for citizens, we work for the government. In a roundabout way, we do work for you. But it's city officials that are, we are charged
So
with
I could
assistance.
call you and ask you a question.
As a public works guy, you might be able to call our utility guy
I'm
or our
calling,
public works consultant.
I'm calling to talk to Dana.
I mean,
Well,
we
you're
generally do
non-compliant.
as employees, but if a citizen did, then it would be difficult for us to answer a citizen. Like, I work with finance people, what's the name? Steve Wyatt works with utility folks. Police chief works with David Moore, our police consultant. We have police, the fire, public works, John Clarkson, utilities, Steve Wyatt. We have HR, we have attorneys. We have management consultants that help city managers and mayors and board members, and then I usually help the finance folks.
Who is the HR person?
Peter Voss,
Peter Voss.
VOSS.
When you went into the website today and put Ridgely in, when it brought Ridgely up, all of your MTAS consultants are on the website.
Yeah, they're all listed in.
So, yes, sir.
What does Tiptonville have to do with Ridgely?
Nothing. You're in Lake County.
County seat.
Okay, thank you. I can call Miss Tammy and ask her a question, she's gonna give me an answer. I talked to the other girl, I gotta give her 15 minutes. And then she's calling Tiptonville to Miss Brenda, I don't care, who knows it. She's calling Miss Brenda Critton up there for advice. Okay, you call Mr. Don, he'll give you an answer. But when you call back down here, she don't like what you say to her. She gonna give you that mouth on her, and then she gonna tell you to get out of her office. I'm gonna be the one standing right there in her office till the day is done. I'm gonna get my point across no matter who it is.
You gotta bring your dad to every meeting.
I've been here 52
Bring your
years.
dad to every meeting.
I've been here 52 years, and I'm probably one of the craziest ones in Lake County. I worked with Jackie over here for years, and he'll tell you, I'm not going back down from nobody. I don't care if it's Mr. Don or Frankie Sharp or any of them. They're gonna hear what I got to say, what they want to.
That's why it's
If
even
you
more
have a
important to define who your
complaint
supervisor
against a
is.
city employee,
You need to
you
put it
should
in
write it
writing.
down and give it to the mayor.
Yes.
He knows.
No.
Write it down.
We have to write it down and date it.
Give me a piece of paper, I'll write it right now.
But it's just like Jackie was saying, it's typical for the citizen to call their alderman and say, hey, I got a biggest pothole in front of my house, will you get somebody to come fix it? The alderman should be calling the mayor and say, you need to take care of this, not calling you, cause then you got calls from 5 different people and you're going in 5 different directions. It all should be filtered through the CEO, the chief executive officer.
Most of them do call me, I do what I ask.
Well, citizens may call you directly,
I get
yeah.
all my life, I know most.
Right.
And like Mr. Don, he knows, he sees me out in the city truck at 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to put a sign over something or a flag over something, get somebody running in it. He's not gonna come and question me, well, why was you out riding around in the city truck?
Right.
I mean, and I.
You're on
appreciate
call
that.
24/7.
That's it. I mean,
So is a utility.
I mean, it's legit, me and Don, we have to get out a lot of times, we go to the water plant, if something happens, it's got an alarm system on it. It calls his fault, it calls my fault. Most times we cross up each other calling, so we meet out the water plant a lot of times, but, yeah, it's just the way it works, we work.
You do
together.
what you gotta do in a city this size,
Right.
but it needs to be done in a mannerly, civil way
Right.
and respectful to
But
each
the
other.
mayor is in charge of the infrastructure. of the city.
That's in the charter.
That's if they let him do his
That's
job.
what I'm stating.
That's if they let him do his job. You got these up here that don't want him doing his job because he's an old country boy like the rest of us, and he tries to help the people. And then you got these rich people out here, they don't care about you. All they care about their money.
About me again, Tony.
If the shoe fits, work, mate, I can't help it. If I'm talking about you, so be it.
And this is the kind of thing you cannot do at a board meeting. An official board meeting, it must be quiet and orderly, and like I said, that's important. It's very important. But I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm just talking. That's just the way I
meeting the other night, like they were all up there and were like, anytime Mr. Don would try to say anything, it's like they talked all over him and they would tell him he like didn't have the authority. So, I mean, what can he do when they do that?
I guess I need to do this.
And not necessarily on that.
Well, you know what? You've got your vice mayor up there with his fist banging on
I
the.
got a bigger hammer than that, Mr. Don.
But it was
Okay.
total chaos.
Okay, but let me throw this out here now.
That's not the way to conduct it.
Or
Now
him
you have
property owner,
proof,
it's pathetic.
according to the charter
Sad.
and MTAS,
It's gonna
that
have to
you
take
are in
these
charge
citizens.
of the day-to-day.
Right.
If they try to tell you you're not,
That's what it's gonna take.
tell them, that may be your opinion, but according to state law, I am in charge of day-to-day, and that's the way it is.
Okay.
You're just gonna have to put your
You
foot down.
don't have to stand
Your
up
problem.
for what you have.
And what if
problem
they
is your
say,
alderman
what if
running
they
in and out all the
just
time.
Moore's in charge.
and tell him, no, I mean, what kind of authority does he have?
Don Moore's in charge.
All right.
Alright, y'all.
All right, so
Don, you need a hand to get.
keep it orderly.
Alright.
If they defy him and just tell him like, no, they're not, cause I can see a couple saying, no, they're not gonna do it. I mean, what can he
I'll
do?
tell you what
Well,
I've
can I-
done.
This board the aldermen have no power or authority whatsoever to do anything
Individual.
unless they're meeting in a session that's been announced to the public. Might be a call meeting. They don't have any power at all to go to employees and do anything or say anything, or individual citizens and remove signs from your building. They don't have the authority to do that. Now, I don't know who's gonna enforce that, but they just don't have the authority to do that. They're overstepping their bounds.
Enough people
Well-
throwing a pound of salt, they'll start to listen.
Well,
Can I say something? I stood up, I promise, this is the last thing I'm gonna say. 'Cause I know I can give these people the rest of them, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, I've been here a long time, and Steve, when he was mayor, he's helped me out a whole lot, he's the one that put me in public works position. He's the one that put me there. First Don first come here, we had to fill each other out, so we was that. I'm not saying because he's sitting up there, but I never had a mayor to come out and say, let's get on all the gravel, let's go fill in some potholes. I started to get off tobacco, he said, you get on tobacco, I got the shovel. The other day, he called me, so when he go out to the playground and get ready to do those shovels. Done a lot of fussing. And the other day,
You're still working on your stand.
and the other day we got out there at the park and he's got this hole, he's out there cutting weed, I said, oh my God, look here. But that makes a difference. Steve didn't have the time. Steve come out and talked to me many times when nobody else did. He'd come out to my house, talk to me as mayor, talk to me about things and give me advice what to do. And I appreciate Steve and Don for coming and talking to me. You know, I'll talk to any of them on the board as long as you want to talk to me. But you're not gonna holler and scream. I'm a grown man.
everybody needs to be treated as a dignified human being.
Disrespect.
So,
Act like adults.
as we get ready to close out tonight, has this been?
Very informative.
Listen, I wanna
Thank y'all for
say-
coming.
I want to thank you guys for coming out. Most cities, especially cities this size, if we said we're going to have a community meeting, we wouldn't get 2 people, 3. And it says something that you're here, and I'm looking at empty chairs back here.
There's,
Right.
that kind of
should- that
speaks
says-
for
that
itself.
says something. Okay, so, I'm Dana, this is Kay, and we work for the University of Tennessee. We don't have any authority we're not cops, but we can definitely give you best practices, we can give you policy examples, we can help you build policies, and we can help you move forward as a community. So, I hope that's what we're doing.
Yeah.
Certainly, certainly.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
In the city,
That's what
in the
it is.
city,
Yes,
if you have a swimming pool,
bye.
let me ask you this, you have to have a fence around it.
Yes, you're supposed
Yes.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yes.
I think that's state code.
That's a state law.
We was told, somebody had to put a fence up, and y'all have an alderman, I ain't saying no names, he has a fence up, he has a pool up, and don't have no fence around it. So, that's, that's called.
Mr. Buildings
Where
Inspector,
you're gonna
zoning guy?
find, it depends on the
I
building.
just seen it the other day.
Yes.
I heard about it, I just seen it the
We
other day.
just drove by there a couple weeks ago and seen that.
Not have a fence around it.
Which building?
Hey, that's because, Tony, that's because our
Which
building
building code?
inspector guy has not
They
had a
have-
chance to
they
come
have-
yet.
Adopted any state law.
We did, we just seen it.
Not since 2006, that's what I told you about, that's what I talked to you about when I did one.
I remember that.
Because I that's what school, so.
They may have changed the plan on the bus route.
It's on the street here. And they voted,
We did, we violated a little bit, didn't we?